I was gonna say.
You're good.
We all think we should eat. It's not like I'm the only one eating. Well, no, I got mine up.
You're going.
Great, thank you very much. This is calling to order the City of Salem Solid Waste Committee meeting for Thursday, September 19th, 2024. Myself, Linda Nishioka is here, and
Deanna Gwen?
and then would the staff please introduce themselves?
Josh Eggleston, Chief Financial Officer.
Ryan Zink, Franchise Administrator.
Callie Leinenbach, Budget Manager.
Susanna Douglas, Customer Action Plan Manager. And Shannon Thomas, Admin Analyst.
Great, thank you, everyone. So we will acknowledge that we have, yeah, I was gonna say. Okay.
Sorry, I'm distracted.
That's okay, no worries. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes
So
from
moved.
August 15th? And I will second it, and we get to vote, woohoo! All in
Aye.
favor?
Yes.
Thank you. The minutes from August 15th are now approved. And now we're at public comment. It's Lori, correct? Would you like to go ahead and make any comment, or would you like to wait and see if?
I wasn't prepared to make a comment, I was just here as an observer. I thought so far had prepared comment.
Great, all right. We also expected him to come, so if he comes, then we'll go back.
I'm also with 350 Center Morgan, but I'm not prepared to the amount of detail.
He's probably stuck in traffic.
Probably.
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming, Lori, and then you'll be back up for Phil when he gets here. All right, thank you very much. So we're now on to action items, which there are none. And at this point, I get to turn it over to Ryan for a management update and information items.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair. So I just want to kind of walk through this a little bit. We've got a couple of things coming up. So upcoming events, the 2024, I think this is the second annual Sustainability Summit. It's hosted by, it's through the Marion Sustainability Business Network, hosted by, ran by Marion County, but it's hosted by the City of Kaiser, so it's at their Kaiser Civic Center. This is on September 27th from 8 to 4, so a number of sessions throughout the day. There's even an opportunity earlier in the week to go tour the Chariots, some of the facilities that the Chariots have with their electric vehicles and their charging and maintenance and all that kind of stuff. And there's another event earlier in the week. I'm trying to remember what that is, but if you sign up for if you go out to Marion County and the Sustainability Summit, I think I sent that out to this group. If not, I will.
I don't remember seeing.
If you're interested, it's a free event. You can go out to just a couple small sessions or the whole day if you want. And kind of just a neat way to see what's going on in terms of sustainability within Marion County and kind of what's coming up. And so there's some great things that are
And that's next week, right?
That is next Friday. Yep, next week. Also coming up on October 12th is, I believe this is the third annual Halloween costume swap. This is ran by Salem Cloth Project. It's an organization that provides free cloth diapers to folks in the community. It's a local nonprofit. Anyway, that I'll be there, kind of helping out and providing some, handing out kind of my usual information on how to reduce waste and how to recycle and how to fix clothing and food waste and all that kind of stuff, and probably have some great fun kids activities and whatnot. I gotta figure that out between now and October 12th, but that's from 10 to 1 o'clock at Inglewood Elementary School. So if you're interested, or if you know folks who
Is that a Saturday, Ryan?
that is a Saturday. Yep,
I'd like to
Saturday.
join you. Do you need help?
Sure. Yeah, you're welcome. So I will, if you'd like, I'll forward the
Yeah,
information to
I
you.
would like to. I would like to know about that.
Thank you. That'd be great. So a couple of great things come out that way. Next, I wanted to, I'm gonna share my screen and just give a little bit of an update of some things that are happening with the RMA, Recycling Modernization Act. So let's see, share my screen right here. There we go. All right. Hope everyone can see that okay. So one of the major elements of the Recycling Modernization Act is that the PROS, if you remember the Producer Responsible Organization, in this case that is the Circular Action Alliance. They're the one organization that has submitted and is applying for that role within Oregon as part of the Recycling Modernization Act. Under the RMA, there are certain materials that the producers are responsible for collecting from the public. However, instead of simply going out and buying property or setting up individual depots or collection methods, the PRO, in this case Circular Action Alliance, is working to coordinate with the existing haulers, with the haulers and the existing facilities that we have in place to collect that material alongside the material that people are already going to, locations that people are already going to. So just very briefly, this is kind of some information that was sent out. Depending on the size of the site, and so as an example, at Salem Kaiser Transfer Station, we collect recyclable material out there. At DNO's offices down off of just north of Cooper, on Boone, yep, they accept recycled material. So CAA is reaching out and starting those conversations with those the owners and the companies that currently manage those depots. Say, hey, do you have room? Do you have the space? Do you have the facilities? How can we work with you to either put a small container like this one, or something a medium sized, or even if they have a space for some larger, a couple large trailers, where they would then provide the supplies, the baskets, the cages, the whatnot, the totes, to, I know I'm kind of going through this, but to collect, and that is not very big, I apologize, let me make that a little bit bigger here. But things like glass bottles and jars, plastic styrofoam, I'm just skipping down through here, plastic buckets, shredded paper, aluminum foil, plastic film, things like that. So can we work with you within the existing infrastructure, the existing facilities and depots, to get places that people are already familiar with going to, that are convenient for them, to take these additional materials that the pros are responsible for collecting and taking them there as well. So the city will be outside of that loop necessarily, but we're helping to coordinate that communication and get that information out and start those conversations there. Now, one area, if you notice, the very top one is glass bottles and jars. That's already being collected curbside. And so we've asked, it's like, hey, why? And so yes, they can collect them at the depots, but we already have a very well-run method of collecting this. Will the PRO, CAA, be willing to help offset some of the current cost of providing that service? And we have a general thumbs up of, yes, there may be some incentive, I think was the word, quote unquote, incentive for towards the haulers to continue providing that service curbside. So don't know exactly what that means, but we're continuing to help foster those relationships and continue to work and see what that means. So there may be some cost offset to our current processes that are going to help with rates down the road. So I'm optimistic on that.
Good. I look forward to hearing how this will be
implemented in the process. And then we'll need to work on making sure people understand it.
Yep. Yes, absolutely. Stop sharing there, and then getting really into solid waste policy discussion. Two areas here. The first one is a handout. I sent it out electronically earlier today. There's also a hard copy here. This is in response to, and I'm not going to spend time going through it, but I just wanted to let you know about it just very briefly. In May, 350 Salem, Oregon provided some written testimony regarding the cost per gallon of some of our curbside services. And so this is staff's response to that public testimony.
That's just wonderful.
It's again handed out there in hard copy. It's also in your inbox. And then following this meeting, I will be formally sending this out to Jim Shepke and Salem, 350 Salem, as our response to that public testimony. The last item on the agenda, I know we're moving from this further, but I do want to spend a little bit of time on this. So this is the current draft council policy on solid waste management. So this is kind of what we've been working and leading up to for the last year. So this is, starts on page 3 of the, excuse me, nope, that's page 7 of the agenda. Thank you. I wasn't all the way through there. So this is kind of taking all the different parts and pieces that we've talked through over the last number of months and putting it into a single document. There are some elements in here that we haven't specifically talked about within the context of council policy, but I've added in here. So I'm just going to walk through the different pieces here, and then we can talk about it. And then the ultimate goal here is that on our next meeting, October 10th, I will be asking for a recommendation from this committee to take this to City Council for approval. And so that's my goal. That's what we're working towards. And so we'll have the next 3 weeks to get feedback from yourselves. I'm also going to be, lack of a better term, shopping this around to the haulers, to Marion County, and getting any additional feedback from them. And then my plan then is to bring this document back to you on the 10th as a red line version. If there's any changes or adjustments that either staff sees or we get back from either yourself between now and then, or others as it's reviewed, and we'll have that red line document, and then we'll be looking for a recommendation at that time.
So I'm just going to interject that
Please.
just making in a public setting and reminding both Deanna and I that that meeting on the 10th, it was the meeting that was moved because of the conference that we're going to that next week. So anyway, I just wanted to let everyone know that we're moved up a week. So we have 3 weeks to work on this.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you very much. So I'm just, like I said, I'm just going to go through this kind of through the different sections here. The first is an introduction, just kind of setting up a little bit of talking about our local system here and kind of why we're doing this. The next section on governance. This is, what is the regulatory authority that we work under, both from the ORS or revised statutes and our own Salem revised code. And then the last part, which is very relevant to what we're doing here, is the city's climate action plan, specifically Appendix 8, which has all the elements and strategies. Section 7 of that is materials and waste. I'll talk a little bit more about that towards the end of this document, but those are 3 kind of guiding regulatory authority and some guide through the climate action plan that impact our work.
May I interrupt you again?
Please, yes,
Sorry.
please interrupt with questions or comments.
At the recent finance meeting that we had, there was comments about the responsibilities of the city for services, that there are some services that are absolutely required.
Mhm.
Would solid waste pickup be one of those required?
Yes, in fact, if you look at the first bullet point under relevant sections for ORS 459, is that cities have the primary
Primary
responsibility for solid waste management. Absolutely, yes.
Thank you.
So
I just
along
wanted to confirm that
with
that
public
is a
safety and
service.
other things, yes, we have the responsibility of making sure that that's.
So that, water, trash, public safety, those are, I'm sure the list is longer, but I just wanted to make sure that we understood that this, that garbage pickup is the responsibility service from the city.
Absolutely. The bottom of this first page is the purpose. I'm just going to read through this very quickly. It's just the 4 lines. Just wanted to kind of set the stage again for the purpose of this document. So this policy establishes practices which will guide the administration of solid waste management and in particular, the establishment and adjustment of solid waste management rates within the city of Salem. To this end, this policy includes the following elements: the basis for calculating rates, allowable and unallowable expenses, forecast factors, allowable operating margin, and low income discount. So that's the current purpose of this document. As we've talked about before, I think we may be looking at certainly adding more to this document, and this purpose may expand at that time. So, but currently, I just wanted to kind of set the stage for the purpose of this document. This at this point is as stated there. So on the next page starts our policy statements, and these are the overall statements that we've worked through over the last couple of months. The first one should be very familiar to you is that cost-based rates. There's nothing that's changed here since we last talked about, but the general thought here or methodology is that actually the very last one I really like. The last line here is, to the extent practical, the rate approved for each service will equal the cost of providing that service plus the allowable return. So we're looking at each services provided, the levels of service that are provided, and that each of those is based on its cost plus that allowable return. The next section, which is a couple of pages or 2 pages, is the allowable and unallowable expenses. I'm not going to go through all these. This hasn't changed much except for number 8 under allowable expenses. This was added as I added a section later on, which you'll see, which is that low income discount and other council approved rate assistance programs are included as a cost of doing service. Essentially what that means is that as whatever the cost is of providing that discount, that gets rolled back into the overall cost of service, and it's not something that we expect our haulers to take as a hit, but it's
Absorb.
yeah. So
By the other.
yeah. So in other words, all other ratepayers will be helping to support and pay for those discounts.
Yeah.
So that's the only thing that's been added there. The next, so the second part of this is the unallowable expenses. Again, haven't added anything to that, but certainly be looking for feedback, and we'll be getting feedback from Marion County and the haulers on that. They've all seen this at this point, but I don't know how much time they've had to really dive into it. So they're looking for feedback on all of these. The bottom of page 3 here, or page 11 of the agenda, or 9 of the agenda, is forecast factors. These shouldn't be new to you, but we haven't yet talked about that within the context of the policy. But we have a couple of times now talked about it within the context of our rate setting. And that's specifically what this is related to. So fuel, we have an index that we use for fuel, labor, where there is a collective bargaining agreement. So one of our haulers works within a collective bargaining agreement. We look to that as what those rates would be. Health insurance, the Oregon Refuse and Recycling Association, or ORA, has a health insurance plan, and most of our haulers work, if not all of them, work within and use that or utilize that health insurance plan. And then disposal rates. Some of our disposal rates are adopted or are set by Marion County. Where Marion County doesn't set those rates, it's determined by who's taking the waste. It's kind of that market rate. We don't necessarily have an opportunity to negotiate those rates, although some of our haulers and some other folks within the industry do that. But this kind of sets the standard for where those rates come from. The last thing here is where there isn't a specific index or factor or something like that. We use a general inflation, which is the consumer price index for all urban consumers, and then the series ID number is there. So we can specifically look at what that series ID would be. And so much of this is to say, this is what we're using, and we're agreeing at this point as to what we plan to use. And so if there are any concerns or questions, I'm very open and free to talking about those and discuss it and see if there's a better option.
This is the first time that I've noticed CPI with a dash U for urban. Are there other acronyms that our CPI might use besides urban?
There are.
Yeah. I don't remember what they are. Josh, do you recall what some of the other,
I mean, I'm thinking of like the CPI, I think it's W that we use for medical
Yeah.
supplies.
Oh,
We use that
okay.
for ambulance rates generally.
Okay, so you're
Things like
now seeing that because of what you're working through with the service.
That one we've actually used for quite a few years for ambulance rates.
Oh, okay.
And associated fees. But yeah, specifically the CPIU is the standard that we use across the city. There used to be a much more specific CPI for Portland and Salem. But when they discontinued that several years ago, we adopted the CPIU for the West region.
Okay, for the West region. Great, thank you for clarifying that. And when we see CPI on other occasions, I may ask again what the
Absolutely.
additional acronym is referring to. I keep interrupting, I'm sorry.
this is what we're here for, these questions, I appreciate it. And if I'm going too fast, please let me know. I'm just kind of walking through this. The next section is the allowable operating margin. Again, we've talked about this, and historically, we have used what we consider an industry standard of a 10% margin. And so that's the target, that's kind of what we're aiming for, which is, it's a pre-tax margin. And so
Pre-tax.
that's saying that, hey, our haulers and the solid waste industry in general is not a not-for-profit industry. It's, they need to make money, they need to pay themselves, and so we have historically allowed a 10% margin, and this is what is being recommended within this policy. However, if you look at where do I put it? The second paragraph in here says, however, the city council may decide not to adjust rates if the expected pre-tax operating margin falls between 8 and 12% of gross revenue. So that's kind of allowing for that range, that if, as we're forecasting, looking out, and it seems reasonable, it's still within that 8 to 12. And this allows also for where one line of service might be a little above, another line of service might be a little below, but overall, it's really close to that 10. So there's some variation allowed in there. But so not everything has to be exactly 10, but just gives us some guidelines. And so this is in general how we've operated before, but we're formalizing that precedent. The last one here under the policy discussion that I've added is a low income discount. And so we have historically tied that to the City of Salem wastewater rate assistance program in terms of the qualifications. So if someone qualifies in terms of their low income, age, or disability status with under that program, that this program matches up with that. It makes it so that, hey, if they qualify for one, they qualify for the other, rather than having to requalify each
And that
time.
would be an ongoing
Yes,
discount. So like on the other task force, we've talked about an emergency utility assistance program.
Yeah.
Are we looking at that here as well, or is that just for water and sewer rates?
at this point, for the solid waste side of things, we have not developed an emergency program where, so if someone can't pay their bill at all, right, and they just need some help rather than a discount, that has not been developed yet. I
I
think
was just curious.
yeah, I think that would be a great option to look at, and I think that'd be something that we can, again, maybe we can model off of what water and sewer is doing and talk with them all. I think I've talked with them about it before. It's been a couple of years. I think it's just the administration of that. It's like, how do we go about actually doing that? We need to learn more about. But I think it would be a great thing we could maybe take up as on our agenda for 2025.
It's
Yeah, I
a
was
little
just curious.
easier with the utilities since it's all in-house and, those monies are a little separate for here. Since they're operated by the haulers, and we basically say, okay, well, as part of the rates, we're gonna pool that together and you can draw from it you know, when.
It would almost be like a grant or something.
Yeah, something like that, you know.
Yeah, I was just curious.
I think it's a great idea, because that certainly comes up from time to time, you know, someone loses their job, or, you know, life
Yeah.
change or something like that, they just need some temporary assistance.
Right.
Yeah, what, right now, there isn't a program to support that,
Not a city program at least.
not a city program.
Yeah, that program was very interesting, the number of people that Deanna and I saw who have utilized it, and at what dollar value we approved it for. But it's a different organization, it's through St. Vincent's de Paul, correct, that then analyzes if they meet the criteria, because if people are coming in for assistance. So, but it might be nice to pick it up to see if that's something that we could incorporate for emergencies. And then also, I want to just confirm that the program that's designed for low income seniors, disability status, they have to reapply every year. It's
Yeah.
not like once they've gotten it, that it's not reviewed again.
Correct, it's an annual review in the same way that the water sewer or the rate assistance, the same wastewater rate assistance program does. So it's on the exact same cycle, same qualification as that system, or that system
And,
program.
and currently that's the Willamette Valley Action Agency that's doing that.
Yes.
Thank you for the reminder.
I'm just gonna pause there for a moment before I go into the future policy discussions or considerations. Anything that's come to mind that you wanna discuss or talk about under the kind of those areas?
I don't have anything else, do you, Deanna? I think you brought it up that, you know, with having just come from the water task force, I think that's a great idea to look at that. It would be interesting to see what amounts that would cause to increase the rates and balance whether or not that's something that our citizens would be okay with, so.
Okay, I've got a note to start looking at that up again.
All right, great.
Appreciate it. So as I mentioned earlier, kind of under the purpose statement for this is that our intent is that this policy can change over time. And so I wanted to put some things, and we've talked about a lot of other policy considerations in this committee. I wanted to notice some of those. So the first being the climate action plan. And again, the last line under this future policy considerations is, as City Council considers these topics, additional elements may be added to this policy through future updates. I just want to notice that intent, that this isn't a one and done. The intent is that this will be dynamic as there are additional issues that need to be brought up, but we need to kind of draw a line in the sand for now, that this is where we're at for now. This is the proposal for now, and then in 2025 and future years, we can be looking at considering changes or additions to this to address other solid waste issues.
Would you have expectations of a certain timeline where if we haven't brought anything forward, that you would want to make sure that we're reviewing it every 3 years? Or would you say solid waste committee should be reviewing it every year? I'm just wondering if you have any timeline kind of assumptions.
That's a really good question. I haven't thought about it quite from that perspective. One thing that I am wanting to do is probably in our November meeting is talk about what we want to see and kind of what that schedule might look like for 2025, kind of setting that plan for, so we have our work plan for 2025 and kind of talk through that. And I think during that discussion, we can look at, hey, I think this would be important, and we can set our kind of our priorities for next year and what we might look at.
Great, okay, thank you.
So the first of two kind of big bucket areas for the future policy considerations is the Salem Climate Action Plan. And And without going into a lot of detail, and I can read this verbatim, but there are where number 4 came from. There are 6 objectives listed in the materials and waste section of the climate action plan that I believe will have or could have a direct impact on how we manage solid waste. And so but I will read through these. So the first one being establish data tracking and reporting processes. There are strategies listed under each one of these. I didn't want to list out all of that. But the Climate Action Plan already does a great job of listing all that out. I feel like we need to do that here. But so data tracking and reporting. The second one, reduce waste at the source and facilities and facilitate a closed loop circular economy. That speaks directly to what's happening with the Recycling Modernization Act. Number 3, set a goal to achieve zero waste, meaning at least 90% of waste is diverted from the landfill through waste reduction, reuse, recycling, and composting in municipal operations. Speaking to the zero waste initiative and some things like that. Number 4, reduce food waste to reduce GHG emissions. Again, we're looking at how can we expand food collection, food waste collection, mixed organics, particularly within the multifamily arena and those areas. Number 5, support sustainable material management through financial incentives. And then last, reduce air pollution from waste. So I wanted to at least notice, notice out loud, if you will, within this document that there are some specific areas related to solid waste within our climate action plan that as this committee has priorities and determines its priorities for the next year or following, and as the climate action plan committee and as our elements of the climate action plan are implemented, that those may impact and we may want to add or adjust what we have in this policy. The next one, again, big bucket idea here, and it is happening whether we do it, whether we are involved or not, but we are, is the RMA, the Recycling Modernization Act, formerly known as the Plastic Pollution and Recycling Modernization Act. Again, big elements of this, which most of them will be, those program changes start in July of 2025, which is coming up very quickly.
It is.
Major elements of that we see down below are the Uniform Statewide Collection List. This includes both the local government acceptance list and the producer responsibility of the pro acceptance list, which we talked about just a few minutes ago. The expanded recycling depots for collection of those covered items. Financial support from pros to expand recycling services and address contamination. So that last part, addressing contamination, I'm really looking forward to the plan that the pro or the CAA will be suggesting and
What's CAA?
oh, say it again.
What is CAA?
CAA again is the Circular Action Alliance.
I was asking also for the public that
Yes.
might be listening, it's very informative.
Thank you for doing that.
Not to be confused with the Community Action Agency.
Exactly.
I wasn't
Yes.
sure what I meant in that context, but.
Sounds like,
Yep,
okay.
Circular Action Alliance, yes. Let's see, where was I? So that financial support from the pros, from CAA, from the Circular Action Alliance to help expand recycling services and address contamination. Number 4, required use of new educational resources provided by DEQ.
What does that mean? I read that, I circled it, so I'm like, required of whom? Like, and
So since we're looking at recycling and waste reduction, rather than from a local perspective, we're looking at it from a statewide perspective.
right,
DEQ is currently working on and working with CAA and local governments to develop basically what is the education and outreach and the material that we'll be using statewide. So they'll be providing that to us rather than us
so are we
coming
gonna have
up with
open houses?
I don't know. We'll find
No,
out.
I'm
Yeah,
asking.
yeah. So they're going to provide that education content
Right.
to us. we'll need to modify it a little bit to, so it's applicable to our local, community. But they're going to be providing that messaging to us rather than us needing to come up with that messaging ourselves.
Okay, but there's no way for them to measure how we get that out to people, or, you know what I mean? Like-
Yes, so there's.
They can send us brochures, but if they just sit at the counter at customer service, I mean, that's not gonna be very effective.
Correct. So there is also, and we haven't talked about it much here, we've had some full agendas over the last year, is the, I just forgot the acronym. Opportunity to recycle. So we
Okay.
call it the OTR, the opportunity to recycle. What that is referring to, though, is a set of standards that local government is required to so we, sorry.
No, it's fine.
We submit a plan every couple of years to DEQ in coordination with the haulers and Marion County of how we are going to perform outreach.
Mhm.
That plan is then approved, and then we follow that plan. So
Okay.
we have, and then at the end of each year, we report on how we followed that plan. This,
Which is the opportunity to recycle.
which is the opportunity. So we have we have an obligation to provide the opportunity to recycle and show how we provided and educated people on the opportunity to recycle within our community.
Got it.
So yes, there is
I
already,
was just looking to stump the
yes.
analyst, you know?
And so I'm assuming some of the examples would be when you're going out for a costume swap and all
Yes.
of those things, those are added to your list to include the education piece and
Yeah.
what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I also am wondering, the goal is for the pros, the CAA, to have this in place by July. They have a lot of work to do,
Yes, they do.
and
We do. We all do.
I wonder if we can find all the locations and get the collection areas up that fast. You know, earlier you were talking about that they might try to utilize places that are already collecting.
Right.
But then they have to have enough space to be able to do what are being asked, so, there's a lot of work.
There's a lot of work.
Does the city have responsibility for infrastructure of this, or any costs that would be building it, or is that going to all be coming from the pros and whatever facilities are being utilized to expand?
So no, so yes and no. The cost of implementing the elements of the RMA are the responsibility of the pros, of CAA, and through the fees that they collect from their pro members. The RMA is designed in such a way that if there is no funding for the elements of the RMA that are being implemented, then the responsibility of implementing those, you can't implement it until you have funding.
Yeah.
And so they recognize that if there's no funding, the obligation to implement is not held to that standard. So
Okay.
I fully expect that there are gonna be some hiccups. There's gonna be, is everything gonna be perfect on July 1st of 2025? No.
We might have a couple sites, but not all of the sites that are currently collecting may not be up and running. There might be a few.
As an example, possibly, yes. Now, in general, City of Salem already has a very robust recycling collection infrastructure with our curbside and the existing recycling depots and all that. But there's going to be some changes to those, obviously. I think the biggest hurdle is changing human behavior. What goes in the blue bin? Where do I take this? Do I throw it away? Do I That's gonna be the biggest hurdle, and that's not gonna change overnight. That's not gonna change in the next 9 months. It's gonna take years for that to happen. We saw the impacts of China Sword and the very quick redirect that we had to do in 2017, 2018
Yeah.
with where recycling went and what.
It was crazy.
So we're still recovering from that.
So
Um,
may I ask this
sure.
then? With the items that CAA are going to be collecting at these distribution sites,
Mhm.
or collection sites, I'm not sure what we call them. Will that change what people will be putting in their recycling bins currently? So what we're putting in there currently, they certainly can take some of those things and go down, but there won't be additional things added to the blue bin. It will be what we can put in there now. Or,
There are some, so again, there's kind of two general buckets. There's what local government is required to collect.
Okay.
And most of what local government is required to collect will be through the commingled recycling bins.
Okay.
And then there's the items that are collected by the pro that we kind of talked about earlier. In general, most of what the local government will be required to collect is already being collected
okay,
and are the items that are being collected in the commingled bin. There are a few things that are being added to that.
okay.
I don't think anything is being taken away
I think
from us currently being collected.
that's the biggest thing, is when you can't put something in there, so. And that's what I was trying to understand, people will still be able to collect some things that they haven't been able to put in their commingling bin and take them places.
Yep.
But basically, the commingling bins are not necessarily going to change much.
No, they shouldn't change.
You might be able to add something.
Yep.
But at this point, it doesn't look like anything will be said, no, you can't put it in there anymore.
Correct.
Because it's hard to get people to stop putting something in that they've been putting in.
Yeah.
You can get people to say, oh, we can be proactive and separate these things and then take them down to D&O or wherever. So anyway, I just think that we may not have all the infrastructure in by, 9 months from now, but we might, or at least in some locations.
Yep.
It'll be a work in progress. And some of that alone may find us making some policy updates even within 2025.
They could very well. When you asked the question earlier about financing, and I said kind of yes to both questions. The reason I said that is that the city has the opportunity to help direct where some of the funding will go. Whereas the funding may not go directly to the haulers or directly to where that work is being done, where those improvements are happening. So we have the opportunity to step in and say, pros, send us the money and then we're going to disperse it.
Okay.
We can also though say, no, we don't need it to come through our coffers, just send it directly to where that work is happening. And so that might be one of those elements of policy that where we say, yeah, we want to have more of a hands-on approach with the distribution of these funds, maybe in this area or in this area, we don't need to have as much of a hands-on approach. So that could be, I see that as one of the probably more immediate policy decisions that we may want to look at.
And we'd also have to analyze the administrative costs of doing that.
Yes. Yeah.
And what is a better way?
Yep.
Or least costly or more effective, however you want to say it. Yeah, so we'll probably be needing to review the policy initially annually. I can see that for at least a couple of years. And then we may get to the point where we could say, oh, everything looks good and do it every 2 years or something to that.
I see it probably, if I may, being more of a as issues come up.
Yes,
Is this something that we need to add to our policy or is this something we can just handle administratively? Is this a place where we really need council direction on this? as compared to, but I think you're right, I think every couple of years, just a overall review of, hey, does this still make sense?
Yeah.
Would be good.
When the pieces are moving around so much, that then we might be able to be in a 2-year cycle
Yep.
for policy review unless something comes up. I think this first 2025 will probably be a year that we need to
Yep.
reevaluate.
So the last two pieces on here, just number 5 and 6, just kind of elements again of the RMA. The number 5, we won't have much direct involvement with, but that's that newly purchased roll carts, bins, and containers contain at least 10% post-consumer recycled content. I think that can be something that we might, for example, we could add that as a policy thing, but as a direction for our haulers to say, hey, we're adopting this as a policy decision that not only is RMA saying it, we're saying it. So there might be something like that, or we might just say, hey, everything that RMA says you're supposed to be doing, we expect you to do. So we could have different approaches on how we add or adjust our policy. The last one is, and I know we've talked a lot about this, and this is an area that I think is very important, is ensure adequate recycling collection and access for multifamily housing. I'm gonna asterisk that, and also mixed organics and the food waste.
But I was just gonna say, we need to have that added there.
So, but these are the elements of the RMA. And we may take these and then modify or add to our own policy
Okay.
as we feel appropriate that way. So that's my presentation for the day. That's what I have. So
Excellent job.
again, I want to leave it open for discussion or thoughts. I know we already had quite a few, and I really appreciate the dialogue. And so again, my ask would be, and I will send this out to the members afterwards with kind of that formal ask, particularly those who are not here, that you look through the draft policy. Please ask questions if you have questions. If you have concerns or thoughts, please feel free to send those on.
I do have one question, not about the policy, but about the email that came from Mr. Shepke on Monday.
Yes.
Did anyone else find that concerning at Reworld? I mean, and we don't control them, but I found his email to be very disturbing.
In the sense of,
In the sense that I was Reworld just sitting back going, we don't care. We're not, you know what I mean? Like, I did find it very troubling. Anyone else?
oh, yes, so Marion County has already extended their contract until December, but they're watching them.
Oh,
So
okay. But they're watching them do. What does that mean? They're watching them?
They're watching to see what pollutants are, I mean, I think they're just wanting to make sure that they're
Because it
doing.
seems like they've been watching for a year, right? That's all.
Thank you. And Mr. Carvey never arrived, maybe he'll come to our next meeting if he has further comments. Is there anything else for our meeting today?
I don't have anything else.
Well, then I will adjourn this meeting of the Solid Waste Committee, which